Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Wood Green in North London to Leyton in East London. This ride takes about 35 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey takes nearly 50 minutes and requires a change of train or bus, so you can save a lot of time by cycling this journey. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Wood Green High Road near Shopping City, and we're going to cut right down this slightly dingy looking alleyway and into Gladstone Mews. Unfortunately there's always rubbish strewn everywhere around here, but we're not there for long, so don't worry too much. We then find ourselves on the relatively quiet Pelham Road. Note that the section of the street that we just cleared is actually one way, and there's actually a cycle track on the pavement for going in the opposite direction. You might want to ignore that and just cycle on the carriageway, as it is a slightly strange design. You then cut over the pavement here and you'll find yourself on Glyn Road. This doesn't go anywhere and it's a cul-de-sac, so there's never any traffic here. What we're basically doing at the moment is running parallel to the high road through quiet back streets and service streets, and as a result we're avoiding all the horrible big traffic that you'll find if you just go straight down the main road. Although this little section here through the Sandlings is actually a car park, there's really rarely any traffic, but you should keep an eye out on the cars just in case any of them make any sudden movements. This then connects us to an old cycle track. You're supposed to go to the left of the bollard here, but the signpost nearby means that it's an incredibly tight squeeze and quite difficult to actually get through. If you do go to the right of it like I did, just make sure that no one's coming the opposite direction, as they would have priority over you. At the end of this otherwise quite nifty little cycle underpass, we get dropped onto Mannock Road. This street is really nice and quiet, and it's actually part of a new low traffic neighbourhood introduced by Haringey Council in the last year or so. It's called Bruce Grove West Green, and its introduction has really made travelling through this little bit of town, which will be on for the next 5 minutes or so, really easy compared to what it was before. The streets are all reasonably wide like this, and they're also now largely traffic free, so I really feel comfortable cycling here at any ability level. One thing to be aware of though is this roundabout that's just coming up. It crosses Belmont Road, which hasn't been made part of the low traffic neighbourhood and therefore still has some through traffic on it. I've never personally had any problems on here, but just be aware that cars could come down there quite quickly. If you've ever cycled or even just lived in North London, you'll probably have noticed that there are a few hills around. This on Downhills Park Road is one of them. There is a bit of a steep incline here, but it's nothing that you shouldn't be able to get up. You can trust me here, I'm not particularly good at hills myself. This section of our route can be tricky to memorise as it weaves through some residential streets. To make it easier, check out that blue sign on the right there, which is pointing us down Wilmot Road. We're going to be following signs like that until we get to Tottenham High Road, so make sure you keep an eye out for them. I'll try and point them out as we go. For example, here's another one on the left telling us to go down Hastings Road, and there'll be another at the end of the street telling us to go right. These signs are actually the remnant of a cycle route which was signposted back in I think the 1990s or early 2000s. It's part of the old London Cycle Network, and this is actually route number 54. For decades this route has existed as really the worst sort of cycle route, just a bunch of signposts sending people down relatively busy streets. But since the low traffic neighbourhoods were put in, it has overnight transformed into an excellent low traffic cycleway. Unlike some legacy routes like this, the wayfinding is actually pretty good, so you're not going to miss any of the turns. For instance, there's another blue sign just here pointing us right. I think people do get reasonably a little bit confused about the different cycle routes crisscrossing London. The London Cycle Network routes are probably the oldest, dating back to the 90s. Then you also have things like quiet ways and cycle superhighways, which are from the 2000s. And more recently, the current routes which TfL are actively maintaining are called cycleways. If Haringey makes this low traffic neighbourhood permanent, I would expect TfL to turn that legacy route into a cycleway and replace the signage, although they probably wouldn't actually make any physical changes. We have now stopped following that signposted route, by the way, and we're going to duck down St Loy's Road, which is going to take us directly to Tottenham High Road. St Loy, by the way, was a goldsmith living in Aquitaine, modern day France, in the 6th and 7th century. I'd never heard of him before. Apparently he's also known as St Eloy and St Eligius. As we approach the end of this street, we're going to want to cross the high road. Now, there isn't a signalised crossing or a crossing with full priority, but there is a little bit of an island that helps you cross. Just wait for a gap in the traffic and you can stay here in this little protected alcove, and that at least allows you to tackle one lane at a time instead of waiting for a gap both ways. We then follow the cycle symbols painted on the ground and go into a car park, which isn't the best place for a cycle route, to be honest. Do keep an eye out as you cycle through here, as parked cars do have a habit of starting to move again. We then turn left out onto Chestnut Road. I particularly like this shared space pedestrianised section here with no parked cars, loads of planting, and in my view this is what streets of the future should really look like. Note that there are kids having fun playing on the obstacle course and some adults on the right working out on the outdoor gym. That's a much better use of public space in my view, and I hope that sooner rather than later we can fit out more of our streets to be like that. Don't miss this right turn here at these new build red brick apartments, which actually look like they're very nearly finished now. There's then an immediate left at the shared space sign, which takes us to a crossing of Monument Way. Now you will have to press the button to trigger that crossing, and you are allowed to cycle right over it onto this painted cycle track, which is better than nothing. It then drops you onto these relatively quiet streets around Hale Gardens. This is fine, and as you can see from the street lights, is relatively well lit, although unfortunately when we came here there was a car doing some really dodgy parking and nearly blocking the entrance to the shared path. We then emerge, unfortunately, onto Broad Lane. Now this crossing here is frankly very badly done. We're going to have to wait at 4 separate toucan crossings to get across the streets. Now in practice people do tend to cross on a red, and that's fine, you can do it on a bike as well. But if you're actually waiting for the lights, then believe it or not, it will take a total of 5 minutes to get across this junction and to the other side of Tottenham Hale station, just over here. The reason I know that is because I timed it and checked. This isn't a motorway junction in the middle of nowhere. This is a forecourt outside a Victoria Line station in Zone 3 of London. So really they should do a much better job of prioritising walking and cycling. I just thought I'd mention that because obviously in these videos I tend to cut the wait times at lights out, so you can sometimes get a slightly false impression of how quickly you can get through lights. So if there's an abnormal wait time, I do try and mention it, like in that case. Once you get past Tottenham Hale station, you do get decent cycle lanes in both directions. The ones that we were on a second ago, segregated with wands, were put in by Haringey, and this continuation here with slightly more permanent infrastructure was done by Waltham Forest, which is the council which we're going into now. This is generally a great cycling corridor, but as always you'll need to keep an eye out. So for example, these side roads, this silver car nicely demonstrates one of the issues that you might have with it. Incidentally, I feel like it's unusual in London these days to see a pub with a car park. Most of them are being converted into gardens, and I would have expected that one to do it considering it has a nice view over the wetlands. We're on a narrow causeway running between reservoirs on either side. If you look on our right hand side you can see overhead electrification wires of a railway. That's actually the Gospel Oak to Barking line there on our right. And the Victoria Line also runs through here, although it's underground in a tunnel so you can't see it. I'm generally a really big fan of this corridor. Waltham Forest has done a great job. It is a mystery to me though why this section on the left has taken so long to complete. The rest of the lanes and the junction have been open for probably at least a year now, but this one's still not done. Hopefully when you come down here though you'll be able to cycle on a segregated lane all the way down here without having to bypass the building work. This junction here outside Black Horse Road Tube is brilliant. You get a simultaneous green, so we want to go right, but we go straight ahead and then we can turn right, all in the same phase, and we don't have to wait. It's exactly the opposite of the Broad Lane junction outside Tottenham Hale, where we can't even cross one road in a single movement and had to wait for several crossings. If TfL and Haringey are looking for an example of how to remodel that one that I was complaining about back there, then they only need to look just a bit down the road. We've now turned off the main road and we're going to progress for a while going down some quiet streets. This particular street is as good a place as any to talk about something I've been meaning to for a while, and that is cycle hangers. Look on the right there and you can see that little green metal hump thing with a picture of a bike on the side. People always ask me what they are in the comments, and it's a good reminder to me that they're actually not very common outside of London. They're actually for residential cycle storage, so if you live in a flat or a house with very little space, you can keep a bike here if you pay the council a relatively small fee. There are generally huge waiting lists to get a space in these things because councils simply don't put enough of them in, although hopefully that is changing. Costs can also vary enormously between different boroughs. One policy which I saw announced this week, which I really like, is in Lambeth in South London, where they've decided that, in principle, it should be cheaper to park 4 bikes than it is the cheapest car. They've therefore made it £30 a year per space. The idea behind that is that no family should be penalised for ditching the car and having to park 4 bikes instead. They're not all that cheap though, so for example Islington charges over £100 per bike, which is actually more expensive than some of its parking permits for cars. One of the things that strikes me about this area is just the number of unaccompanied teenagers and older children that you see around on the streets cycling and walking with friends. Removing traffic from streets like has been done here in these low traffic neighbourhoods really does just liberate more people to get out and about and move independently. In a second we're going to be turning on to the very creatively named South Access Road, which I've always thought could maybe do with a renaming competition or something like that. We have been weaving through quiet traffic calm streets for a while now, and if you need a bit of help to remember the way to go, don't forget that you can always download a map of the route, which is linked in the description below the video. It comes in GPX format and you can use it on whatever app or device you choose to use. Now, unfortunately, when I came down here to film this the other day, the road was actually blocked with some roadworks, so I did have to dismount and walk for a short period of time. But hopefully when you come here, you'll just be able to sail through here in a second like it's nothing. I know these things have to be done, but when you make these videos, you really do get a big picture of just how much of London is being dug up at any one time. It really is a huge amount. It's really rare that I will be able to go out and shoot a video without running into some sort of road closure. Now I'm back on the bike and we're going to leave this low traffic neighbourhood and go back onto Waltham Forest's big network of main road cycle lanes. This one here is Markhouse Road and it mostly consists of one-way tracks on either side of the street. The tracks aren't the widest, but I actually don't mind, and that's because the street itself isn't particularly wide, and I just think it's impressive that the council has managed to fit fully segregated, protected tracks down a street like this. It really does show what you can achieve if you prioritise cycling. There is a slightly odd, if perfectly fine section here where it turns into a two-way track, but if you look at the cycle symbols on the ground, it's reversed, so normally we would expect to be cycling on the left-hand side of the lane, but the symbols have been painted backwards, including on this one as well, so it's indicating that you should be cycling on the right-hand side, which should probably be changed as it could cause an accident if it confuses two people at the same time. Honestly, if every main road in London had something like this running down it, then this channel would probably be out of the job, as you wouldn't really need a video to show you where to go. Anyone could just jump on a bike and head where they wanted to, just as if they were in a car. Keep an eye on the cycle traffic lights here, by the way, which turn green for us and give us a little bit of a head start over the other traffic. We then want to cross the road here over Lea Bridge Road and head towards Church Road, which also has protected cycle lanes running down both sides, although this bus stop here could potentially do with a redesign. Keep an eye out up ahead for the awful illegal parking by this van, which has forced these pedestrians into the cycle track. We'll be turning off the main road again in a second, and if you need to remember which turning it is, it's on the floor here where there's this arrow pointing left on the cycle symbol, which sends us onto Capworth Street. One thing I think is really nice about this route as a whole is that it really does vary between protected cycle lanes on the main roads and making use of traffic calm streets, mostly in low traffic neighbourhoods like this one. Not only does it keep it interesting to watch, but it's also really emblematic of the different strategies that are being used across London to make it better to get around by bike. Jokes about making this channel redundant aside, I do hope that one day you'll just be able to jump on your bike and count on one of two things. Either you're in a low traffic neighbourhood with very low levels of motor vehicles like this one, or you're on a main road and there's a protected cycle track. Already I think this part of Waltham Forest is getting pretty close to that, and all we need to do is make sure that that extends across the whole of the capital. If you agree with that and you've made it this far, you should probably hit the subscribe button, as I do post new videos just like this every week showing off the latest developments around London for cycling, and also finding new ways to link existing stuff together as well. Subscribing doesn't cost anything. All it does is it means that my videos get promoted into your YouTube homepage so that you won't miss any when they get posted. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to people who go a step further and support the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, then there is a link in the description below the video where you can sign up. We're now approaching High Road Leyton, so it's basically time to say goodbye. I'm going to dismount from my bike and just show you exactly where we are. I'm really pleased with that route. It's really quite a long way and it connects to quite decent town centres without much in the way of links between them. If you remember, it takes at least 50 minutes to get between the two by public transport, so you really are doing yourself a favour by cycling it, and there's not really any excuse because it is a nice ride the whole way pretty much. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and make sure you hit the like button as it does help other people find the video as well. Thanks again to subscribers and also to people on Patreon. See you again next time. Thanks again for watching.